Hello and welcome back to Thinking Deliberately. Let me start with something that sounds outrageous. Most adults don't think like adults. And that's what this episode is all about. What does it mean to think like an adult? Well, they have adult bodies, adult jobs and adult mortgages and responsibilities. Some run companies, lead governments, or maybe work in universities. Some even write books about psychology. But psychologically, many are still waiting for somebody else to tell them who they are. And that's not an insult, it's a developmental observation because we've made a very strange mistake in modern society. We've confused getting older with growing up. They're not the same thing. Age happens automatically, development doesn't. And that's the first idea I want to leave with you today. Nobody wakes up on their 18th birthday suddenly capable of holding complexity. To give you a good idea of this and make it personal, I could not have done my PhD at 35 years of age, but I could at 45 years of age. I just simply wasn't complex enough in my thinking at 35. So, nobody turns 30 and automatically becomes self aware. Nobody receives a promotion and instantly develops wisdom. We've all worked for bosses for whom that was true. Life gives you years. Development asks what you did with them. Now, before you think I'm talking about intelligence, I'm not. Some of the least developmentally mature people I've ever met have been exceptionally intelligent. And they can quote research, argue brilliantly, win debates, destroy opponents on social media, explain economics, neuroscience, philosophy, maybe even quantum mechanics, and still become emotionally 7 years of age the moment somebody disagrees with them. Intelligence isn't the same as development. Knowledge isn't the same as awareness. Experience isn't the same as maturity. And that's where psychology has often let us down. We've become very good at measuring what people know, not very good at understanding how they construct knowing itself. So, what does it actually mean to think like an adult? I mean, what I just mentioned there is your epistemic stance. How do you know what you know about yourself? Developmental psychologists have been wrestling with this question for decades. People like Jean Piaget, Robert Kegan, Jane Lervinger, Suzanne Cook-Greuter, and a load of others all pointed towards the same broad ideas. Adults don't simply accumulate knowledge. The really important change is that they construct reality differently. And that's a profound idea. It's not more information, it's just a different construction. So let's make it practical. Imagine somebody criticizes your work. One person hears, I'm useless. Another hears, they don't like me. Another hears, they're wrong. And again, one more, that's interesting. What can I learn? Same event, different construction. The criticism didn't create the experience, the construction did. And that's true far beyond any criticism. It doesn't matter if it's politics, religion, leadership, marriage, and so on. None of these arrive with labels attached. Human beings construct them. That, for me, is where adulthood really begins. Not when you know more, more knowledge about other, but when you begin noticing that you're the one constructing the world you're experiencing. Now, this is where Robert Kegan's work becomes incredibly important. Kegan describes something called the socialized mind. This is where most adults spend much of their lives. Their identity is largely authored by the groups they belong to, their profession, family, political tribe, religion, obviously, culture, their organisation, and their other people's approval matters and belonging matters. I mean, England are playing football tonight. Will I be wearing my England shirt? Probably. The questions sound like this: what do people expect of me? What will they think? What's the correct answer? And what does my side believe? There's nothing childish about this. It's a perfectly normal developmental stage, but it becomes limiting if we never move beyond it. Eventually, something interesting begins to happen. People start asking different questions. Instead of saying, well, what should I ask or what should I think? They say, well, what do I actually think? Which principles do I want to live by? Or which beliefs have I inherited without examining? That is what Kegan called the self authoring mind. You stop borrowing your operating system, you begin writing your own. For many people, this feels like freedom, and compared to blind conformity, it obviously is. But here's the twist: self authorship isn't the end of development. In fact, it creates a new danger. You stop being ruled by everyone else's certainty and start being ruled by your own. Your principles become identity, your worldview becomes territory, your opinions become sacred. You don't belong to the tribe anymore. BeyondTheTribe.com. You become the tribe. You've probably met people like this. They proudly announce they've rejected conventional thinking. They've done their own research. They're independent thinkers until you challenge their ideas. Then suddenly, they're just as defensive as the people they criticised. Different operating system, same attachment. And constructive development theory picks up nicely and precisely here. The question is no longer, who authored my beliefs? The question becomes, how aware am I that I am constructing them all? That changes everything, because now I can examine not just my opinions, but the process producing them. I can notice my intention, my attention if you like. I can notice the assumptions quietly organising my thinking. I can notice what I'm protecting. I can notice when certainty is giving me emotional relief rather than truth. And that's a very different kind of adulthood. It's not certainty, it's awareness. Not having better answers, constructing better questions, and maybe not defending identity but examining it. Not trying to win every argument, but trying to understand how the argument came into existence in the first place. That's why I define adulthood rather differently. Adulthood isn't about age, it isn't about qualifications, and it isn't about having children or paying taxes or even just responsibility. It's about becoming increasingly aware of the construction of self, context, and response, because the moment awareness increases, choice increases, and the moment choice increases, freedom begins. In places like LinkedIn, I've often quoted my thesis that says, will is only free at the point of awareness. That's what we're talking about here. Not unlimited freedom, constructed freedom. The freedom to notice the old response without automatically becoming it. And that's why awareness sits at the centre of constructive development theory. Not because awareness is fashionable, but because awareness is where choice becomes possible. Without awareness, we're simply relaying and replaying construction. With awareness, we can begin constructing deliberately. Now, here's why it's really important. Because every profession that works with human beings assumes adulthood. Universities definitely assume it. Businesses assume it. Governments, courts, healthcare, the military, sometimes even parents. Teachers and coaches, leadership, all assume it. But almost none of them ask the obvious question. What level of adulthood? What developmental capacity? How aware is this person of the way they're constructing reality? Instead, we ask about personality or competence, experience, qualifications, behaviour. What's his knowledge? How clever is he? You any good at pub quizzes? All quite useful. None of them directly measure developmental awareness. And perhaps that's why so many intelligent adults continue making remarkably childish decisions. Not because they're stupid, because nobody ever taught them to observe the construction itself. That's the shift. That's the revolution. Thinking like an adult isn't about sounding intelligent. It's about becoming increasingly aware of the mind that's doing the thinking. Everything else follows from there. So here's today's uncomfortable thought. The question isn't whether you're an adult. The question is, who is constructing the adult you currently believe yourself to be? This is thinking deliberately. See you next time. Thank you.